Hey everyone! I'm in the middle of working on an upcoming Indiana Jones themed video that was expected, but I didn't expect it this early. And so I'm kind of shuffling my schedule a little bit to fit this video in because I had always planned to do this as soon as the item arrived. And in that spirit, I had also planned to fulfill a request. And that request was, since the Indy 5 video came out, there have been a number of friends, followers, supporters of the channel that have asked if I would take the section of the video that is regarding the Indiana Jones costume, the Indiana Jones outfit, and make that a standalone video, because they want to show it to people, but they admit they want to show it to people that don't have the attention span or patience for a nearly 4-hour long-form review of Indiana Jones 5. And that section, which is Chapter 7, sat right in the middle of the video. There were some other sections of the video that pertained to Indy's costume as well that were outside of that chapter. And I thought, well, what I'll do then is I'll take Chapter 7 and those disparate parts, and I will put them together in a video that stands alone for anybody that isn't interested in an Indiana Jones 5 review, but maybe they would like this information. So I've done that as a kind of prologue to the video that I'm working on right now, which I'll keep that secret because it's kind of a big deal for me personally, and I just want to get my thoughts together on that rather than sort of spill it early. But yeah, that video will be coming in the next few days as well. So watch for that. But this is a re-edit of the bits of the Indiana Jones 5 review that pertained to the history and evolution of Indiana Jones' famous outfit. And who knows, maybe if you didn't watch the Indiana Jones 5 review and you like what you see, you might be interested in going over and attempting to watch the Indiana Jones 5 mega review. That would be awesome. All right, well, I'll get out of the way now, and I hope you enjoy this re-edit titled, "What Happened to Indiana Jones' Outfit?" Indy rolls up to Hotel Atlantique, ready to get the Antikythera back from Helena before it disappears into the black market. There goes Indy, out of the cab, now wearing his trademark outfit again. Except something about this doesn't feel right. Why would Indy wear his bullwhip and bag into a nightclub if he's playing low-key and hoping to get in and out without a fuss? In all of the other films, Indy dressed appropriately for the venue he was venturing into. He didn't wear his adventure look when boarding a plane, or a train, or taking a meeting with U.S. government officials, or traveling to Venice to speak with his father's research partner, or walk into a busy nightclub to negotiate for an artifact. Indy always knew how to dress for the situation. Hell, he even changed his appearance to get into a Nazi castle more effectively. Yet here he is, strolling into this swanky hotspot looking like he just came off the range into a dusty western saloon. But hey, it's all good because he's wearing that necktie we saw him wearing in Last Crusade. Again, more of that visual Last Crusade window dressing without any of its charm. But the necktie in this case only calls out how hopelessly shabby the famous Indiana Jones outfit has become. And before you go at me with some crap about how his outfit is supposed to reflect his aging or some shit like that, don't come at me with headcanon justifications for choices in films where explanations are not provided and act like your imagination is a certainty. The observable fact here is that Indy's legendary outfit has become a shambling whimper of its former self, and this Dial of Destiny version is the nadir of the 42-year-old deterioration conceptually of Ford's famous costume. The outfit of Indiana Jones is spectacularly famous because it was done so well in its original manifestation in Raiders of the Lost Ark. However, in each successive film, the perfection of that outfit has eroded in major and minor ways. But as we know, a lot of people don't pay attention to details. If you need proof of that general assertion, ask any random person about differences they observe in Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones costume over the 5 films, and I promise you they'll say, "It always looked the same to me." But the truth is, it never again looked the way it had in Raiders. And that had nothing to do with Harrison Ford getting older in each movie. Remember, officially, Temple of Doom is a year before Raiders of the Lost Ark, yet his outfit got slightly sloppier. I can already hear people's eyes rolling and the accusations of nitpicking wafting in on the breeze of dismissive smugness from the people who enjoy checking their brain at the door. So let me take you on a rundown of what happened to Indy's clothes. In Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones had the most precise silhouette capped with the most unique hat in the entire film series. In fact, this hat was so unique that Herbert Johnson, the original hatter for the first 3 Indiana Jones films, wasn't able to replicate the hat's look for Temple of Doom or Last Crusade. It took fans over 30 years of trial and error and obsessive research to finally manage to unlock and recreate the Raiders of the Lost Ark fedora. In fact, that level of obsessive research resulted in a fan who taught himself to make Indy fedoras being hired by Steven Spielberg as the hatter for Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, because at that point, Herbert Johnson wasn't able to do the job. Only with this latest film has the original hatter jumped back into the game. The Raiders hat was a combination of unique shaping and a deliberate turn in the brim. For the uninitiated, that means the hat's crown was shaped off-center, forcing the brim to torque when worn with the front dents centered. This resulted in the brim flaring out on the right side while curling upward on the left side. The overall effect, combined with the narrow front pinch, created the most unique hat in the entire Indiana Jones film series. And if you still doubt me, here's Indy from Temple of Doom. And now here's Indy from Temple of Doom with the Raiders hat on his head. Here's Indy from Last Crusade. And here's Indy from Last Crusade with the Raiders hat on his head. Ford's outfit in Raiders of the Lost Ark was carefully thought out from head to toe. Everything made sense and also fit him really well. The shoulder bag and the bullwhip were over his left hip, while his Smith & Wesson revolver was holstered at his right hip. The bag was carried by a shoulder strap worn under the jacket, and the bag rested at or slightly under his canvas web trousers belt. The gun holster and bullwhip were worn on a separate leather belt, and the bullwhip holder was attached to the belt at the left hip in a fixed position. The whip was on the left because when brandishing it, it's most effective to pull it to the ready crossbody like you would a sword. The bag was also on the left because the last thing you want is something in the way of your gun holster at a crucial moment. His jacket was a tighter fit, he also had the leather gloves, and the overall outfit was very dialed in. Let me repeat that. Dialed in, meaning no detail was left to chance. In Temple of Doom, the hat changed dramatically. The jacket draped more, the holster became a huge World War I job, the whip holder on his equipment belt was now free to slide around, the bag started to hang lower on his leg, and the omission of the leather gloves. And there were a myriad other small changes as well. With Last Crusade, the jacket became looser and puffier. He was now lugging around a massive Webley WG Army revolver instead of the Smith & Wesson from Raiders of the Lost Ark. He wore that tie in the middle of the film, and his hat barely had a brim at times. As fun as Last Crusade was, Indy looked like a hot mess. In Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, he was pretty much Last Crusade on repeat, except with a much nicer hat. But now, for the first time, he was wearing the shoulder bag outside his jacket, which was really increasing the sloppy factor. For 3 movies, the bag strap was always under his jacket, and it makes a lot more sense this way because it means you can zip up the jacket without the strap getting in the way, while the bag itself is still at your waist and ready for use. And you can take the jacket off and not worry about having to take the bag off and then put the bag back on. In other words, the whole configuration is a lot cleaner. For half the film, he lost his equipment belt as well, it being taken by the Russians, which made his ability to hook his whip to his trouser belt for the rest of the film an even bigger mystery. See, he starts that adventure with his equipment belt with his gun. After they're captured by the Russians take his gun, whip, equipment belt, and his bag. When Indy escapes later on, he has his bag, his whip, and the whip holder that was previously on the equipment belt, but no equipment belt, nor his revolver. What, did Indy say, "I'll take the whip, but screw the gun. I don't need it." It's really ludicrous and reeks of Spielberg just trying to find a way to get the firearm away from the hero. With Dial of Destiny, I don't even know what we're looking at anymore. The hat appears to have had the Raiders' turned brim very slightly restored, but it's extremely subtle if it's actually there at all, as it's only visible in a few stills and shots. The jacket is basically the Return of the Raiders version of the jacket, just cheaper looking. Meanwhile, a lot has changed or flat disappeared underneath. For example, in 4 films, Harrison Ford's shirt had these strips of fabric that ran down the front on both sides, from the shoulder seams through the center of the pockets to the bottom. And at the beginning of Dial of Destiny, digital Indiana Jones also wears this exact shirt. But then we get to 1969, and now Indy's shirt no longer has that key detail. He's basically wearing a safari shirt from LL Bean. It looks like a standard field shirt you'd find in a Dickies catalog. The equipment belt is now entirely gone, as is his holster for his revolver. While you can argue in a post-war world, Indiana Jones would no longer be able to carry a firearm internationally, that doesn't seem to hinder anyone else in this pulp adventure film. So part of me keeps smelling the stink of Disney corporate interference here, since no explanation is given. Especially when you consider at the beginning of the film, in the midst of World War II, Indy is also without his revolver while fighting Nazis, and that makes no sense from any angle. Of course, he's also totally without his shoulder bag in that sequence, and not at all like a classic Indiana Jones movie would have presented the character. Not that the lack of a revolver matters much. Indiana Jones hasn't fired a revolver of his own since the tank chase in Last Crusade. This leaves his whip holder looped around his canvas web belt, which I can tell you from experience would not be advisable or functional in the long term, given that the weight of a rugged bullwhip would pull on that belt and probably crimp the webbing as it slowly tugged down the left side of Indy's trousers. This might explain why Indy's whip in Dial of Destiny is always a very thin, taut loop on his belt that doesn't look very substantial. The whip is black leather and looks really short. Frankly, it looks more like a sex whip or a costume whip than a functional bullwhip. Like it's just there so the filmmakers can check a box and say, Harrison Ford is wearing a hat and has a whip. Therefore, he is Indiana Jones.
And that's not nothing. At the same time, it's not much.
This is the problem with modern filmmakers and Disney especially. They don't know how anything in the real world works.
Closely mimics an actual whip. It's very safe though. Oh, that's a lot of fun. Yeah, I know. There we go. Whoa!
What if I told you that what you're seeing is the last time Indiana Jones ever uses his bullwhip? We are just under an hour into this 2.5-hour movie, and this here is the end for the Indiana Jones bullwhip's career. Let's forget the whiplash is digital for a second. Let's consider the fact that Harrison Ford was about to turn 80 while making this film, and had been injured to the extent that the film was delayed for months. And many scenes had to be shot around his absence with a body double and some very dodgy face replacement technology used in post-production. We've already discussed the lack of fisticuffs in this film because with a guy Ford's age, the audience isn't gonna believe he can absorb a punch, let alone throw them endlessly like Indy did 40 years ago. So we won't be getting the fistfights and physical stunts that made Indiana Jones so popular with moviegoers. And we know Disney didn't want him to have a gun, which would have been the most believable way for an 80-year-old man to hold his own against younger, physically stronger villains. Fortunately, Indiana Jones had a third option to both defend himself and create exciting action scenes in a film with an aging hero.
The bullwhip, the colorful calling card of Indiana Jones.
They could have done a lot with this throughout the film, and the audience wouldn't have batted an eye. Now, if you're about to say, an 80-year-old man would have a hard time cracking a bullwhip, this is still an Indiana Jones film, where we've just seen the same guy careen atop falling shelving racks and ride a horse into a subway station, and in a few minutes leaping between 2 moving vehicles at 60 miles an hour. When you're in a situation where your star is imperiled by just being in fight scenes, to the extent he injured himself for 6 months during a rehearsal, the bullwhip would be your prime way out. And since Disney is using digital whip effects these days anyway, it's not like Harrison Ford's rotator cuff would be in any real danger. A lot of really clever uses for the whip could have been devised over the course of the film. However, as we've seen, the filmmakers don't have the kind of creativity needed on this kind of film, nor any first first-hand experience with things like guns or whips or Indiana Jones or, hell, bloody history. It's such a wasted opportunity when you consider the poor marketing team had to use the only 2 whip stunts in the film in the trailer, likely because they were desperate to find anything exciting to cut a preview together with. Clever use of the bullwhip throughout this film could have kept Indiana Jones a viable action hero for this story, as it would be a plausible thing for an aging man to still accomplish and also justify him carrying it at all. And for the ignorant, I'm not suggesting him swinging around on it. I'm suggesting using it the way we saw him use it in Raiders of the Lost Ark and Temple of Doom. In combat. However, at this point in Dial of Destiny, it just hangs on his belt for another 90 minutes so Disney execs can say, yep, he's still Indiana Jones. But if you aren't going to use it at all, why keep it around? He could drop it on the floor of the hotel right here, and it wouldn't matter for the rest of the movie. Mangold had the perfect situation to bring the bullwhip back into this series for the finale, given its inexplicably diminished use as the first 4 films progressed. But Mangold dropped the ball. Again. However, it's when we get to the shoulder bag that the implications of the low effort that went into Ford's outfit for Dial of Destiny really start to reveal themselves. Now, for the first time in the series, Ford wears the bag over his right hip and once again outside the jacket. You might say, so what? I also initially reacted to this with a dismissive thought that because he was no longer wearing a gun, it would balance out the outfit to now have the bag on the right side if the whip generally remained on the left. However, this doesn't seem to have been a wardrobe change with any thought put into it. See, Indiana Jones' shoulder bag has a buckle on the strap so it can be adjusted. This buckle is always facing the front and sits generally in the center of his shirt. The bag, a British World War II gas mask bag, has a metal disc on the side that faces behind Indy when worn from the right shoulder over the left hip. Flipping the bag to the left shoulder over the right hip results in the forward facing of that metal disc, which looks weird enough, but when you consider that the filmmakers didn't even bother to rethread the shoulder strap so the buckle would remain at the front, it starts to smell more and more like they just didn't care. The buckle rides against the back of Indy's jacket for the entirety of the film, and it just looks strange. Plus, they've now got it riding so low, it looks awful. It's practically at his knees. If they wanted to flip the bag, changing the direction of the strap so the buckle remains on the front only takes 3 minutes. I should know, I've threaded these straps many times, including once for a friend who wanted the bag oriented for the right hip. Not only should the buckle be in the front for aesthetic reasons, but from a practical sense, you want it in front of you so you can easily adjust the strap while wearing the bag. Someone approved Ford wearing it over the other hip for this film, but didn't take a minute of time to reset the strap. And that speaks volumes about how this entire film was handled. And this is where I really threw up my hands. The Antikythera is now in Indy's famous shoulder bag. While 30 criminals blow out each other's eardrums firing pistols right beside each other's heads, Teddy snatches the dial away from under the table. Now at first I thought, the dial must have fallen out of the bag when Indy ate pavement. I thought it was a little unlikely, but whatever, until I saw Teddy with Indy's entire satchel. The film that just tried to convince me you can crack a bullwhip in a very confined interior is now trying to trick me into believing Indy's entire crossbody strapped bag magically got away from his torso? The only way that could have happened plausibly is if he'd been carrying it hooked over the same shoulder like most women used to carry their purses.
You're not really wearing that, are you?
Wearing what?
The man purse.
It's not a man purse. It's called a satchel. Indiana Jones wears one. So does Joy Behar.
And I'm gonna say again, if he'd had that bag strap under his jacket like he's supposed to, this definitely wouldn't have occurred. Admittedly, the Indiana Jones films have had a history of playing fast and loose with the magic bag strap. In Temple of Doom, I'm still not sure how Mola Ram got the bag off Indy's body to play tug-of-war with it while hanging from the bridge. In Last Crusade, when he falls off the tank, somehow the bag strap goes full Ant-Man and passes through the matter of the metal gun barrel to get looped around it when there's no way that could happen. Still, that's no excuse to do this crap in Indiana Jones 5. Indiana Jones' outfit in this movie has more in common with the official Halloween version of the outfit from Party City than it does with its progenitor, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And that is truly saddening. He looks like what a few corporate zeros would say if you asked them to describe Indiana Jones. Oh, he's got a hat, and a whip, and a leather jacket. But if we're being objective, the writing was on the wall for the deterioration of his costume since the credits rolled on Raiders of the Lost Ark. In Temple of Doom, we had Willie's crack at his wardrobe.
So what are you supposed to be, a lion tamer?
And there was the little joke about Indy grabbing his hat before the door came down. It was a fun moment until it became a trope in successive films. In Last Crusade, he wore it everywhere, even with his business suits, and it looked bizarre. And this was despite previous and subsequent films depicting him wearing a gray dress fedora with his formal attire. The tagline for Last Crusade was, "The man with the hat is back." And after losing it at one point, the hat magically lands at his feet minutes later. In Crystal Skull, he loses it again, and we're forced to watch giant ants almost carry it away. The filmmakers chose in the sequels to make his costume a punchline. Despite Dial of Destiny's many problems, I can say it's the first film since Raiders of the Lost Ark to not have visual jokes made in the movie about his outfit. Yeah, there's the moment when young Helena runs Indy's hat out to him because he forgot it, and Sala has to bring him his entire outfit because he didn't have it. And we do have Helena paying him a backhanded compliment about his hat in relation to his age.
I like the hat, by the way. Makes you look at least 2 years younger.
So that weird reverence for it from the other Indy sequels is still there. Mangold puts a lot of shots in the film that sentimentally linger on the hat, always with a hint of the Indiana Jones theme, and then there's that last shot of it in the movie, a sight gag that is as stylistically baffling as it is tonally inappropriate. The unfortunate truth is, Dial of Destiny didn't need to make jokes about the outfit because they somehow managed to make a joke out of the outfit itself. The way they handled the famous costume of the central character is the smoke that leads to the fire surrounding the lazy execution of this entire movie. This was Harrison Ford's last appearance as his most famous character. Disney and Lucasfilm had an obligation to make him look as great as he ever had in the series. But their result, regardless of how much effort they might claim to have put into his outfit, looks totally low rent and apathetic. And if you still think Indy's costume in Dial of Destiny was just fine, consider. He went from this in 1981 to this.